just not tonight. So thanks again. The speakers, as you can see on the agenda, are our president, Charles Harden, Kathy Robbins for the Village Foundation, and I see that there's a informative handout regarding some figures and progress, and that has just been an awesome organization for promotion of town and community initiatives. The Blowing Rock TDA, the infamous Tracy Brown. I thought I would have heard him by now somewhere. Is he here? I see you in the back. You're being very quiet. And then lastly, our mayor, Charlie Sellers, and town manager, Shane Fox. So I would, again, thank you again for being here. Thank you for any of you that volunteer for all of the, especially summer intensive events, but all the events that the chamber puts on in collaboration with the town and other community organizations. We are who we are because we come together like this and try to make it a great place to be. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Charles to come up. Thanks.
Welcome to State of the Town. How many years have we been doing this? Does anybody know? This is the 14th. I feel like I'm getting really old when I think about that. But at any rate, 14 years ago. Here's the agenda. If you didn't get a printed copy, there are some in the back of the room. And Chelsea's already been over this. I want to thank all of our partners in producing this event, the town of Blowing Rock, certainly the Tourism Development Authority and the Village Foundation in this case, along with the Chamber. To tell you a little bit about the Chamber this year, this is the first year that we really feel has been somewhat normal since COVID. And so we've been doing a lot of rebuilding this year. We haven't done a lot of new things, but we have had to rebuild our staff, and we've had to rebuild our events, all of our committees, and we've done a lot of planning. So we did a strategic planning exercise toward the end of last year in cooperation with App State, and so that led us into the spring. So we have completed a 3-year strategic plan. Most of the planners these days, things are changing so rapidly that they say that 3 years is about as far out as you can look anymore. Out of all that planning, these are our two brand logos here, Love Blowing Rock and our chamber logo. We left our mission statement as it was through the planning. We felt like that was still adequate. We did do a vision statement. I'm not going to read all these because it just takes too long. We also did come up with some values for the chamber this year in that strategic planning process. And the last thing that we did there was a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, which is on our website, which is new for the chamber. For the year, we still had a pretty good year in 2022. This event last year was in November, so we're really reporting on a 6-month timeline now instead of a year like we normally do. We have 521 members. We had a 96% retention rate. Someone asked me the other day how many businesses we had close in Blowing Rock as a result of COVID, and as far as I know, we didn't have any that closed specifically as a result of COVID, which is very, very good. We also have 31 networking opportunities, business after hours, business before hours, and all those kinds of things. As you know, we do the farmers market. We do that for 20 weeks. These are our committees, essentially, or how we're divided out. Economic development has 3 committees, event strategy, community development, and business and entrepreneurial development. And I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. Our community Community Government and Education Committee, which is the committee that Chelsea and Erica back in the back at the registration table are the co-chairs of, support local educational initiatives for the chamber, as well as building relationships with our elected officials, and we do some advocacy. We actually went to Raleigh this year and did some advocacy work. And then our ambassadors and membership committee. As you know, we have 4 major tourism events. These are those brands. Art in the Park, the Winterfest event. I said 4, there's 3. Symphony by the Lake. All of you are familiar with those if you live here year-round. So part of the process this year was to try to rebuild those events because during COVID, they were all pretty damaged. Art in the Park, this year, we are running 100% capacity in the show for the first time in 3 years, so we're real excited about that. We have lost a lot of artists over the COVID years. A lot of people have retired. A lot of the ones that you've known in the past have taken early retirement. So we are trying to recruit new ones. And there's a lot of new talent out there. And if you've been to the show lately, you've probably seen some of that. Symphony by the Lake was on July 22nd this year. We did sell that event out by the 4th of July. Last year, we had a reduced version of the event. We sold half the general admission tickets that we'd sold in the past. And everybody really liked that, not being so crowded and so dense. So we decided to continue. So this year, Symphony by the Lake was half attendance again. It still looks pretty crowded in the picture, but it is half the capacity that it used to be. I do want to note that the event next year will be on July 21st in 2023, for those of you who want to mark your calendars now. And the reason I put the asterisk there is that it has always been the 4th Friday of July, and it's always been on the same day as the Tour of Homes. Next year, it will not be. It's on the 3rd Friday of July, so be careful about that. You might not get a ticket. Our Winterfest event, for those of you who were here in the winter, realize that that was the one week that I think we really had winter. I mean, it was brutal. And so we had a lot of our events that week that were very affected, like our beer garden. It was so cold that the beer froze in the lines, so you couldn't even get the beer out of the taps. If you like cold beer, that's good. But at any rate, COVID this past year still affected that event. We had to cancel the Polar Plunge, primarily because of COVID. The density of the jumpers and everything, the way it was set up. So we're hoping this year that we will be able to have Winterfest back like it used to be, hopefully. If things continue to progress as they have, we'll see the traditional events come back. It is January the 26th through the 29th of 2023. Business and Entrepreneurial Development Committee. Dr. Ben Powell is the chairperson of this committee, and he leads a group of really young folks that are very energetic and very a breath of fresh air for Blowing Rock. One of the things that they do is our Young Professionals group. So this year we rebranded our Young Professionals to CORE. Now, CORE is not an acronym, it's just the name of the group. But CORE is a networking and leadership group of young people that will help us take the future of Blowing Rock where it needs to go through community service. So we're excited about the CORE group. They do have a CORE group, probably of about 30 or 40 young folks that are doing leadership training and other things to get ready for the future. This is our Leadership Challenge group. We had to not have Leadership Challenge during the COVID year, but we came back this year, and we actually had one, and we were very excited. This is our largest class ever. There were 17 participants here. This is the 9th class since we started Blowing Rock Leadership Challenge in 2007. So far, we have graduated 116 graduates through this program since 2007. So we're very proud of this group of folks. Our next class is March of 2024. We do it every other year. So if you know somebody that this might be a good thing for, please tell them to get an application and look at March of 2024. This class chose a class project. If you'll remember, 2019 class built a new restroom over by the Blowing Rock School on the playground, the new playground. Raised about $80,000 to do that. This class decided to do the school cafeteria. The deck outside the cafeteria there was about to fall down. It was so bad that they couldn't even go out on it. So the class took the deck down and rebuilt it and re-landscaped it. It's all ready when they start school next week for the kids to be able to eat out on the deck again. So we're excited about that. The school's excited about it, I think. And I know the kids are. And, you know, during COVID, they really wanted to eat outside. So now they'll be able to. Community government and education. This is Chelsea and Erica's committee. We provide some community forums like this. State of the town. 14th year. Also provided 5 scholarships to Blowing Rock School children through a grant through the Community Foundation to send 5 of our bright students down to the North Carolina School of Science and Math for the Summer Accelerator Program. This is to develop STEM education opportunities for them. And this is, I can't remember how many years we've been doing that, but it's a great program for our students here in Blowing Rock to get some STEM exposure. This committee also established the task force that Chelsea mentioned a while ago, the Underground Utilities Task Force, which has worked with all the utility providers, gotten them all in the same room together, which is the first time that's ever really happened, to get the real costs of undergrounding our utilities on Main Street. We're very excited about that, but we have a one-time opportunity to do that project in 2023. As Shane will tell you in a few minutes, they're going to dig up all down the Main Street to put in a new water and sewer line. So while you've got the street dug up is the time to do it if you're ever going to do that. So that's why we feel like now is the time to look at it. And from a resident standpoint, that's a disruption. It will be a disruption. It's going to be a disruption for businesses, but it will also be a disruption for residents. When you're trying to get to the post office or trying to get wherever you're going to go, to dig that street up in 23 and put in water and sewer and then come back 5 years later and disrupt it again to put in overhead utilities underground, that just doesn't make much sense. So we also, this year, we do candidates forum, and this is not an election year for mayor and town council members. So we will be partnering with the Boone Area Chamber to do a candidates forum for the county commissioners, the school board, and the state and federal folks that those elections are this year in November. So that will be on October 4th at 5:30 at the Appalachian Theater in Boone. So we will be partnering with them on that, and I hope that y'all will come out and see that. Next year, our Leadership Challenge folks will be doing a candidates forum here in Blowing Rock for council and mayor elections. Few community events that we provide. We do provide the farmers market, as I mentioned earlier, 20 weeks from May through September, from 3 to 6 on Thursday afternoons. We would like for the farmers market to be bigger, but it is, unfortunately, we just cannot get vendors to be there. So we keep trying. I know we have a great flower lady up there, and I know a lot of you guys stay out of the doghouse because of it, so that's good. Our summer concert series was rebranded this year into the Alaire Summer Concert Series, which is a free concert on Sunday afternoons on the same weekends as Art in the Park. It's at 3 p.m. and it's in Memorial Park, so come on out and enjoy that. And then Shred Day is another thing that we offer the community in partnership with First Citizens Bank every year. Bring all your documents out of the attic or basement down there to First Citizens on Monday, August 22nd. Please note that is Monday. It's usually on Wednesday, so I kind of point those things out, but it's from 10 to 1. So it's a great opportunity to get rid of those documents that you need to do by the box. Some of the things we're working on for 2022, big issues, workforce shortages. This is real, folks. I know that you know that. We have a huge workforce issue, and not only in this county and in this town, but everywhere. So we do have that issue. It kind of ties to the second one there, which is the affordable housing issue. We have no place for these folks to live. So there's a lot of reasons for that. We won't get into that right now, but these are issues that the Chamber's working on for the next year. We will continue to work with our core group. We believe that those are great. It's a great opportunity for us to develop the future leadership for Blowing Rock. We will be recruiting laptop entrepreneurs and remote workers. We know that we had a lot of folks move here during COVID that brought their businesses with them or working remotely for some business somewhere else. That's a great thing for us here. We will also be finishing up this underground utilities task force. We hope to present that to the council this fall, and we hope that you'll be around for that when we do so. We're also working with the town and the TDA on parking and wayfinding solutions, which are going to come up in another presentation in a few minutes. So I want to thank you for coming tonight. We'll have some question and answer at the end, but at this time I would like to introduce Kathy Robbins, who is going to come and talk to us just a little bit about the Village Foundation. Kathy.
I want to thank you for having the Village Foundation come to the State of the Town presentation tonight. The Village Foundation works very closely with the town on projects. That's one of our goals, is to, as part of the economic development of the community and helping government lessen the burden with coming up with raising funds to do local projects here in the town. And you've seen several of them already. I want to point out one of our latest is that beautiful fountain out there in the lake. So make sure you look at that on your way out. The foundation helped fund that. But we began trying to help with some of the projects because we knew that the town just couldn't get to everything, and of smaller projects. So our first project was helping with the downtown lighting during the holidays, and that was our very first project that was very successful. And I look at it now, last year it just exceeded expectations there in the park. It was absolutely beautiful. One of our biggest projects that we did next was the Mayview Plaza. if you'll see that with the pavers out there before you go into Mayview, that was one of our larger projects that we raised funds for to do from the community. And right now, we're working with the Historical Society, Tom O'Brien and Barry Buxton, on the History Walk. And so that is down here around the park. I don't know if you've seen some of the rock columns that have been put up, and they'll have plaques on them giving you a little bit of the history of the town of Blowing Rock. And Barry is working on doing the interpretation of that history. So we'll have plaques on there. Our hope was to have a ribbon cutting in the fall, but we're not sure we're going to be able to because of the supply chain, trying to get supplies, construction materials, different things. So we may have a ribbon cutting in the spring, but we're on the second phase of the History Walk. We've already sort of completed the first phase. And so if you get a chance, please walk around and see. Some of the columns don't have the plaques on them yet, but please look around and see. We're very excited about this project and working very closely with the Blowing Rock Historical Society, because I think that's one of our missions too, is all of us working together as a community, the different groups. And I do want to compliment, because when you come into Blowing Rock right now, between the town and I think the garden club, the flowers this year are probably some of the most beautiful I have seen. It is just magical, and I hear guests comment all the time on them. So well done. But the History Walk, we're very excited about that. And the other thing, one of our missions that we've helped the elementary school in some of the projects Charles was just talking about, sending them to the math and science school there in Durham. And we also helped with the restrooms over there by the playground. So we look at things where we can help our community and enhance the charm of the community. And so that is what we try to do. The other thing that we've also helped with during COVID, we tried to help. We had Rock United Relief, and we helped some of the businesses with grants because they couldn't open because of COVID in 2020. So we helped some of those local businesses sort of kind of get through the tough time there before they could open, which was a challenging time. And we also, in our total projects of grants so far, we've reached over raising or putting money out in the community over $1 million, which, and I always call it our grassroots in this part of Western North Carolina, because we don't have a lot of the corporations to underwrite a lot of things that a lot of communities have. So we have to depend on our community residents to help us, and community businesses to help us raise funds to do projects, whereas some other communities have a large company underwriting them. But 75% of the grants that we've raised funds for have impacted the town. And so what we do raise, we put back into the community. We do have the Rockstar program. We send out a mailing, I think it's in June. And so far, we've raised about $27,000 to $30,000. I'm hoping we'll get to our goal of $51,000 that we raised last year, but it's moving a little bit slower this year. I'm not sure why, but hopefully we'll meet the goal that we had in 2021. And so we appreciate the opportunity of you all having the Village Foundation here. I do have this handout. We have a handout out there talking about our projects, and you can see some of the projects that we completed through the years here. We did add 6 new board members this year, so that can help us get some of our more of our projects done. So anyhow, thank you again for having the Village Foundation, and I want to thank the other community and the town of Blowing Rock for working with us on many of these projects. Thank you. And I have the great honor of introducing Mr. Tracy Brown, the Executive Director of the... Yes, honor of the Blowing Rock Tourism Development Authority.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Charles, for putting this on. Chelsea, all your hard work. Shane's going to get us tuned in here. If you haven't had a chance to grab one of these calendars, do that. We produce these every year. They're back there at the table. And I want to be sure to remind folks of that. And by the way, Amanda is here from our office. We're preparing to design next year's calendar, and it's going to be in honor of the 100th of the horse show. So if you've got high-res images and you'd like to see something in the calendar, submit them to Amanda, and we'll get those in there if it passes the test, so to speak. A lot of people in here I don't know. So let me do what we call in our business an intercept survey. It takes about a minute. This happens everywhere you go. You're on vacation or in a restaurant. You have people come up and say, hey, where are you from? How long are you in town for? What are you doing here? What brings you to town? That kind of thing. That's an intercept survey. So real quickly, how many of you are here year-round? Year-round residents. Wow, fantastic. How many of you were born here? So I guess we were all tourists the first go-around. This is working out. Anybody in the tourism business here? Got a few, yeah. Anybody, how many seasonal residents here part-time? Fantastic. Anybody moved here in the last 5 years? Welcome. If anybody's not said that to you yet, welcome. We're glad you're here. Tracy Brown, I'm with the Tourism Development Authority. I've been in tourism for, Kathy and I have worked together 35 years. And I was in it a few years before that, so close to 40, I guess. Been in Blowing Rock since 1987, when we used to work out of the chamber office with the Southeastern Ski Areas Association. The chamber office used to be where planning and zoning is now in Town Hall. And just remember that slope conditions change as a result of weather, skier traffic, and other factors, so be aware of changing conditions. I have to say that. State of tourism, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It is good. Sometimes a little too good. We got that. We'll go over some numbers here. I love to use this because we all stayed there at one time or another when it looked like that. The Green Park Inn, way back in the day. This past year, in our fiscal year, we run July 1 through June 30. We saw $1.7 million in occupancy tax collections. What that means is about $30 million in lodging sales just in town. That means about $90 million in visitor spending in our town. 15 minutes will not give me time to go over $90 million worth of business, but we'll hit some highlights for you. In the North Carolina High Country, we just got these new numbers yesterday from the state. And by the way, David, they're going to be sending you some stuff from the state on the tourism numbers here so that you can dig down. These are the counties that we call the High Country, with the exception of Caldwell. Caldwell's not really in the High Country, but part of Blowing Rock is in Caldwell County. So I broke out what we call the High Country, $955 million in visitor spending. The beauty of that visitor spending number, now, if you look at these counties, you can see Watauga County blows it out of the water. We're at $465 million in visitor spending just in Watauga County. Right below that, Caldwell County, $63 million in visitor spending. Now, you can see the percentages up. Everybody across the state was up this past year, 2021 as compared to 2020, because we had a dive there during the height of the pandemic. But the beauty of this outside money is what it does for us here locally. In Watauga County alone, almost 3,000 employees or people are employed by tourism. It's $465 million of visitor spending. $111 million of that is there's in labor income. $18 million in local taxes, $16.8 million in state taxes. That results in a $650 a year per resident savings on your taxes. Look at Caldwell, $64.36 a year in resident savings. That's the difference between a county that has a lot of tourism asset and one that does not. The beauty of that outside money, that's one thing I wanted to point out. These people come, they have a good time, they're here to have a good time, they leave a lot of money, and they leave town. We don't have to educate them. We don't have to rehabilitate them. We don't have to incarcerate them. And we don't have to resuscitate them. They're not spending our money. They're spending their money and leaving town, which is a beautiful thing. If you were to look at us against the county's this green top line here. Red line in the middle, that's Boone, and Blowing Rock is in blue. You can see what happened right here. That's when the world stopped. And we literally could not rent anything in this town. Boone had some rentals because there were essential workers that had to stay somewhere, hospitals and that kind of thing, contractors and stuff had to stay somewhere. We literally did not rent a thing for about a month. And with the, oh Lord, the world's ended. But when it came back with a vengeance. All this right here in green, and you can notice too, I'll point out that our trends are pretty much the same. You know, tourism happens when tourism happens. Leisure travel happens when school's out, summer's going, or if you're a skier, it's during ski season. But what happened right here, that's all Airbnb. That's all short-term rental. When you think about it, the county has no hotels, okay? Hotels are in the business centers. So we've got the hotels, Boone has the hotels, the county does not. But what happened is Paw, I just did this at Watauga Lake, rents a big house for everybody to come to. And they're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars a week to do that on the side of Apski Mountain, over in Misty Mountain, out 221, all around the county, on the backside of Beach Mountain. You put 20 people in a big, 15-room house, you got a party happening. You're going to spend money on that. It's going to be expensive. But that's why that number is like that, or that's why that graph looks like that. We do in town here, the Tourism Development Authority in conjunction with the Chamber, constantly are doing surveys to find out what's happening in the business community. How are you feeling? We had to throw out 2020 and 2021 because it was such an anomaly. Nothing about it was real. Nothing about it was going to be standard. We said, forget it. Don't compare anything to 2020, 2021. Went back and looked at 2019 because that was the most kind of regular, predictable year that we had had. And we asked the businesses, how are you doing as compared to that? 82% of them say that they're doing as good or better than they did in 2019. I won't dive too much into this, but essentially what they're saying, the businesses are telling me, and I'm talking to attractions all the time, it's getting back to a more normal time. It's not this erratic stuff we saw in 2020 and 2021. We're a little more predictable, and we're glad to see it because we kind of need the break. But I'll tell you this, a lot of things have changed and they will stay changed. For example, this working remotely business. I took my kids out west. We did 2 weeks out in Colorado, drove it so the kid could every night sit at her hotel, in the hotel room and do her homework. We'd go on another 8 hours, another hotel room, doing the homework. We did that for 2 weeks. I conducted a little bit of business, not much, research and development in Boulder. But that will continue. A lot of people, about 30% of the folks that left the office, it's the understanding that they will not go back. They will work remotely. Some of you probably do it here. That's a wonderful thing that we're seeing. And what that will allow is for more travel or more visitation without interrupt, in the middle of the week. It doesn't all have to happen on the weekends now. And you'll hear it sitting at the market. If you're out there getting a cup of coffee or something, you'll hear people conducting business on their cell phone with a ham biscuit and a cup of coffee in their hand. Yeah, I'm in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. I'll be back next week. Our visitor markets, where everybody's coming from, is pretty standard. We've kind of known this all along. It's the Triad, it's the Triangle, it's Charlotte. We get some from Atlanta, a lot of seasonal residents from Florida, and it's been that way for a long time, and we kind of know that. Biggest issue we're seeing across town is staffing, particularly with restaurants. Retail, not so bad. Restaurants, that's why they're closing a couple of days a week. They can't get enough help, and they need to give the staff they do have a break. So that's another thing that's probably changed for the good. You're going to see where you're going to need to make a reservation. You're going to see that they're going to take a break, and they're going to do that regularly now because they've learned how to make more money by doing less work. So that's a no-brainer. it's a problem for us in the tourism business because we got to accommodate these folks. So down the road, it may be something we need to talk about with council, about food trucks or whatever. I'm not going to get in a screaming match right now, but I'm just saying, if we're going to feed people and accommodate them, we've got to figure out how to do that. Blue Ridge Parkway, that's a love of mine. I'm on the board of directors and executive board of the Blue Ridge Parkway Association, and we just met with the National Park Service and the new Superintendent Tracy Swart just 2 nights ago, Kathy? Yeah, 2 nights ago, on Tuesday over at the Kona Estate. They were up 13% this past year, 15, almost 16 million visitors. That's a $1.3 billion economic impact on the communities or gateway communities along the parkway. There are 29 counties that are along the parkway. That's a huge economic impact for those 29 counties. It supports 17,900 jobs, and the Blue Ridge Parkway has more visitors than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined. It's not even a national park. It's a unit within the national parks to connect to national parks. The only reason it's there was to give the old mountain folks a job and to put Shenandoah connected to the Great Smokies. We're just blessed to be right in the middle of it. So next time you see Bunky, you can tell him to thank his grandpa. Well, and Charlie's grandpa too, because they helped bring those feds down here to show them why they needed to come this route. By the way, the parkway is going to be doing some work over the next few years. The next 3 years are 75 miles of paving that's going to happen from Dalton Park in north up in Virginia all the way down to Grandfather. And that's going to take about 3 years to do. There will not be any hard closures. This is called a hard closure on the motor road. That's not what's going to happen in our section. There will be a lot of lane closures, and you'll have to be, flag man, go around, whatever. They're going to repave 75 miles, like I said, and then there are a couple of bridges that will be replaced on up north of us, up around Dalton Park and beyond. Luckily, we got the Great American Outdoors Act, and about $200 million will come to the Blue Ridge Parkway. Blue Ridge Parkway needs $500 million for work that has been deferred for the last 30 years or better. So let's not complain when we see them out there working. Let's be thankful we got that funding, and it's going to just make our section of the parkway that much more beautiful. Short-term rentals. This is where the police ought to be in here. Because if you start throwing things, I'm going to throw it back. Short-term rentals have been on a lot of people's minds. And I talked to a couple of folks that have been in the rental business, like Jenkins, forever. And we actually have fewer short-term rentals in our town now than we did 30 years ago. And it's because of the 28-day rule. And a lot of owners come to buy here so they can rent when they're not here, just like at the beach and like we've done here forever. When they realize that they can't rent week to week or weekends and that kind of thing, they go buy somewhere else. So we've moved. If you ask anybody in the rental business, you don't have to ask me. You can, but ask Jenkins, ask Linda Walker, ask Blowing Rock Resort Rentals. They'll tell you those folks have moved out into the county, and that's another reason we see that county number jump the way it has. What we do have here is a program. Some folks were saying that we don't know where they are. Well, we do. The town knows exactly where they are. They know who owns the property. If they're out of compliance, they go talk to them. We have a program called Host Compliance, so we can tell you where every one of these properties are, and we can tell you who owns them, who's in compliance, and who is not. So if you've ever got an issue like that or a question about that, just ask, go talk to Kevin, go talk to Taylor. They'll help you. We've got 170 short-term rental units in the city limits of Blowing Rock. The majority of that is happening at either Royal Oaks Apartments or over at Chatola. Chatola's been set up to do that forever. One thing that's happened is you've noticed, you remember what that house used to look like when it was long-term rental? You couldn't even see the damn thing from all the weeds growing up in the front yard. Now we got $1 million house there. You remember what was sitting there before they built that? That's where the old Blue Ridge Motel used to sit. Nothing was there. We've increased the property values tenfold on these properties. So it's a good thing that we've got them, and they've really dolled up these areas. State level, let's look real quick. $28.9 billion in spending in the state. If you look at tourism employment, nearly 200,000 people work in the tourism industry in this state. State and local taxes, $906 million spent. Most of that money's coming out of food service and lodging, but it breaks it out. And if you ever want this, again, this was embargoed until today by the state. They just released the numbers to us. You can email me, call me. David, I'm sure we'll do an article on it. I'll send you the link to this report. Overnight visitor profile, quick. 90% of folks that travel to North Carolina are coming here for leisure trips. We do get some business here, but the majority of it, as you well know, is very much leisure. 42% stay in hotels, 37% stay in a private home, usually with friends or family. 7% stay in a shared economy lodging, that's Airbnb and Vrbo, or in a rental home, that also can be considered Airbnb and Vrbo. Average stay, 2.8 nights for a North Carolinian. Out-of-state visitors, 4.1. That's the reason we like to have those out-of-staters. They spend more money. 85% come to us via car. Party size, generally 2.5. Average age, about my age, a little younger. 60% are married, and 36% have children. This is what happens every day with overnight party spending in North Carolina. $79 million being spent every day in our state. It's a very, very strong number. It's a strong industry. It's the fastest growing industry coming out of this kind of weak recession or whatever you want to call it. The last job report, the biggest number was hospitality and leisure. That makes sense because you're going into summer and you got to have folks running rides and cleaning up hotels or whatever. Where we're saving over $600 a year, the average household savings is about $580, and 1 out of every 54 people in North Carolina work in leisure and travel. This is the way our budget breaks out. We had a budget this year and we adjusted because the income was getting so strong. $1.79 million. The way it breaks out, $915 for direct tourism promotion, including things but not limited to advertising, website, public media, public and media relations, parks and recreation event support, that kind of thing. Different types of events. The Roger Brooks Sustainable Tourism Management Plan, we paid for that out of that section of the budget. If you look at what we call the tourism infrastructure, this is where some folks don't know, and if you ever go on our website and want to really dig down into the legalese and all of the enabling legislation, you can do that. This is what we call the 1/3 side of the budget, $581,000, and that's doing things like, and I'll show you, highway lighting out on 321, the flowers out on 321, or landscaping, that kind of, some of the beautification downtown. That's where some of that money comes from, and that's where the town council comes to our TDA board and says, hey, we'd like to have some money to do these projects. Would you be willing to fund it? And we can do that. The board typically always goes along. We've never had any controversy there. Administrative, $272,000, and then $24,000 on things like legal, minutes, audits, stuff like that. Parks and Recreation this past year, and these are numbers that have not been audited. We just are in the process of closing books right now, and they'll be audited in the next month or so. $28,500 on Parks and Recreation events. $25,000 to pay for the lighting along the bypass. We've got $132,000 on the bypass and mowing the grass, keeping the flowers up and all that stuff, which, by the way, they do a beautiful job. You talk about a gateway. That's got to be probably the prettiest doggone bypass in the state. And they use that. I know Big Mo and Darren and all those cats that do that, as most of the locals do, they use this as a calling card. Because they say, oh yeah, we do lawn rock. Of course, we should have that too. This, I think, the last year we're paying on the Brom parking deck, and we've already paid off the property at Brom, so we'll have a few $1 million in this when all said and done. But this year scheduled $89,000 for the parking deck there. Another $55,000 on Memorial Park. Some of that is not just infrastructure stuff, but it's cleaning the bathrooms, keeping the trash up, things like that. Landscaping, beautification in downtown center, about $20,000 there. Messaging and advertising, we talked a little bit about this last year. We pulled back when we saw the numbers that were coming in and all the people that were just, dropping in on us and overwhelming us. We pulled back on all of our call to action advertising. This is called advertorial, and a lot of our ads will look like this. And typically, when you see something like this, an Avatori, it'll say up in the corner that it's sponsored or paid content, something like that. You don't see a lot of, the only ads that we have running right now is a billboard out on 421 that is actively running, that is a call to action. Even it is not a call to action. It's more about being a good steward with our lands and our public lands. It's not about, hey, come visit Blowing Rock. But anyway, we'll work on things like this to push people to weekdays and try to kind of flesh out that leave no trace idea and taking care of our lands. So, yeah, regular advertising is out the door right now. Another one is when we're working with, is that a beat for me? Media, and making sure that when they call and do a query and they're looking for something about Blowing Rock, we point them in the right direction. Let me just show you. This piece right here came out of a couple of great meetings Charles and I had with the editor of Our State, which we've known forever, Bernie Mann, and Elizabeth Hudson, with the publisher and editor is Elizabeth Hudson. That led to this piece that Chip Perry went and took his car out on the Parkway. They called and said, hey, can we get somebody with a fancy car? Take a, got the dude for you. We get another cover. Oops, then we get another one from Southern Living. We didn't pay for that, but it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to us, and it is all about the relationships that we have with these folks. Challenges, we got a bunch of them. There's number one. Write that one down. We've got to work with the town and work and support the council to do the best we can to fix that. Staffing shortages, Charles has addressed that. I've mentioned it. It's a challenge. Supply chain continues to be a challenge, and we don't know how long this is going to last. Operating hours. Why are we closing at 5 o'clock on a Saturday? Why is 90% of our restaurants closed on Tuesday and Wednesday? That's a challenge. We need to work on it. Schedules. I talked about this as midterm or with the council retreat. We got to quit piling stuff on top of each other. We're doing a lot of this to ourselves. When we've got 3 or 4 events, we rented out this place, it takes up the whole parking deck, we got a problem. And we did it to ourselves. So we as a community, not TDA, not chamber, not town, have to work on that. And we can do that. The economy, it's going to be what it is. This, please support the council in putting some feet under this thing. We've got about $100 grand in just the study. We need about $22 million to implement it. We can do that partially with TDA funds. There's grants out there available, but please support the council and let's fix the problems that we've identified through this plan that we've paid for by a leading expert in this country. So help us with that, would you? That's all I have. You want to contact me, there's my contact information. You can go to blowingrock.com. You can find me on there as well, and we'll have questions afterward. Thank you. Charlie? No, you can do that. Okay, the Honorable Mayor, come on up here now. Charlie Sellers, everybody.
I hate following in his footsteps. By the way, he gave you his office number. Get with me after the meeting. I'll give you his cell number, okay? Charles said he gave me 3 hours and 5 minutes. I'm going to cut it down to 5 minutes, Charles. I'd like to thank the Blowing Rock Chamber of Commerce for what you do for the community. I think it's great. My grandfather and Chris Robbins' grandfather started the chamber many, many years ago. And I'm very proud of what you all have done. I want to thank all of our departments in town. I have no numbers for you. I'll leave that to the really important people like Tracy Brown and Shane Fox. But our town departments have done a fabulous job. Being at the Blowing Rock, I see a lot of people that come out and say, Blowing Rock is beautiful. So well maintained. People are so friendly. You ought to be proud because what has enabled us to reach this level have been our town employees, our citizens, our nonprofit groups, the ladies up here with the community club planting flowers, our town planting flowers, the TDA, the chamber, all those people. There's so many people, I don't have time to make mention, but they are why we are recognized now as such a fine community. We have to work on keeping it that way. Over the past 5 years, the town councils have done a lot of good things for the community. One thing I have learned, which is going through the growing pains, is in politics, nothing happens fast. The approval process is very lengthy. Infrastructure has been a main issue with our town. In the next year or two, you will see infrastructure become or take a back seat because it will be done. Thanks to the councils, their approval, thanks to the citizens for their support. And our council have looked at safety, crosswalks, new crosswalks, and of course, our recreational areas. So you all need to be proud because you put this council, these councils, where they are. You need to be proud because you've got good town employees and we're in a very special community. So give yourselves a hand, and now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Shane Fox.
Raise this up a little bit. So I'll take the 3 hours that Charlie didn't speak. So I think that will get through about 150 or so slides. No, in all seriousness. My name is Shane Fox. I'm the town manager here for the town of Blowing Rock. Been here for going on 4 years now, which is kind of crazy. COVID has definitely changed your timing and how you think about timing in so many different ways. I do have a PowerPoint here tonight to go through some updates on some projects that we've been able to accomplish, and then really setting the stage for what 2023 is going to look like. I put here to kind of echo some of the same comments that have been said. Thank you for selecting the town of Blowing Rock, because just like most of you here, other than the few people that I think raised their hands that were born here, we've selected the town of Blowing Rock. Whether that's to live here, to work here, or to play here, we've all selected this town out of many, many choices, thousands of choices. And COVID has definitely changed the way we look, I think, at how we pick a place to live and to work and to play. So from a town's perspective, we simply say thank you for choosing the town of Blowing Rock for whatever reason you're here. We appreciate that. Outline of the state of the town. We'll go through and we'll talk about the election and COVID, what's happened since we met this time last year. We'll look at what I call Blowing Rock by the numbers, some interesting numbers that I think are important to pass along, including some of our staffing information, some of the things we've been able to accomplish this year. We'll look at a few things as 2021 and 22 items of note, and we'll spend most of the time looking at 2022 into 2023. I put here on deck, baseball terminology, year of action. So we've spent a lot of time in the last 2 years getting ready for 2023, and you'll see a lot of things we've got in store. So I've got a picture up here of our elected officials. I'll start by saying 4 of them are here tonight. You just met the mayor, Mr. Sellers. Mr. David Harwood is here, Mr. Pete Girini is here, and Mr. Doug Matheson's in the back of the room. We did have an election since we met last. Our mayor was elected to his 3rd term. Our mayor pro tem, Doug Matheson, is in his 4th term. Pete Girini and Melissa Pickett, Ms. Pickett is not here tonight. Both were elected for the first time in their first terms. So all this has happened in November of 21. And then we did lose 2 incumbent members, Ms. Sue Sweeting and Virginia Powell, Sue's 2nd term and Virginia's 1st. And then at the bottom here, Mr. Albert Yount and David Harwood did not run this time. We are hopeful they will next time. Albert is in his 4th term and David is in his 1st term. So I put here the decision maker. So it's been said by several folks up here, these are the individuals that ultimately make that final call. It's up to the staff to hopefully get them the information they need for them to be able to make what they feel like is the right decision as we move forward. COVID. COVID has changed everything in this town. You heard Mr. Brown talk about tourism and how COVID has changed. I put a couple dates up here. We went in shutdown mode here, state of emergency, on March the 14th, 2020. It was a Saturday. The mayor and I met at Town Hall. We signed the first statement of emergency or declaration of emergency that we had signed outside of weather-related disasters. And it's taken us until this past Monday when the state of North Carolina finally released the state of emergency. So over 2 years during that time. 100% uncertainty, and that's on everything. So as we went into COVID, we had a complete shutdown here in the town of Blowing Rock for about 2 months. I know Tracy said for about a month we didn't rent any rooms. We had no knowledge of what was going to happen when we opened back up in June of 2020. What we found and what we've been finding in the last 2+ years is a record amount of everything from sales tax to property values, our TDA, our tourism, our ABC store, everything you can put a number to, we have seen record month after month after month. We're starting to see a little bit of that slowdown, but we really have no comparisons that we can actually look at. So when we put together an annual budget, and we're looking at putting together a town budget for an entire year, it's been almost impossible to really predict how 1 year is going to look like from 1 year to the next. Very blessed to have these issues. We've got a lot of places off the mountain that have seen negative impacts because of COVID, and they're just now starting to get out of some of those negative impacts. I put here bathrooms. We'll talk about that during our Partif update in just a few moments, but that's key. We'll come back to that and why I put that up there and the importance of some of the things we've got going on. So we'll talk a little bit about numbers. I didn't say this, my background is actually nothing to do with public administration. So a lot of times I wake up and say, how did I get here? So my background's actually in the CPA world. So I love numbers. I've got about 50 slides. We'll just go through slowly and read out the numbers. No, I've got a couple slides here. I won't bore you. The town of Blowing Rock. What makes up the town of Blowing Rock? It was mentioned by the mayor. Our employees, I believe, truly are second to none. We've got about 75 full-time employees and about 30-ish part-time employees. So at any given point, especially during the summer, we've got about a staff of 100 or so individuals, but 75-ish are really our full-time employees. That's over 6 departments: full-time police, full-time fire, planning, zoning, public works, which is our streets, sanitation, park and recreation, and then our administrative folks work within town hall. That makes up our 75 individuals here. We've got about a $12.8 million general budget, so we'll say about $13 million and about $2.5 million in water. So we operate about a $15 million company, so to speak, with about 100 employees, if you want to look at us, comparison to what all the other entities that are out there. We provide protection services, fire and police. We also provide what we call essential services, which is our planning and inspections, our water and sewer, and our public works, which is sanitation. We put here our extras, which is our economic development and our park and recreation staff, and landscaping. I would argue that some of these extras that we put on here are just as essential to get people into this town and why people choose to live here and why people choose to shop here and spend money here. So I put the terminology up there. They're all essential. All 6 departments are essential. It takes all 75 in order to be able to get this town operating the way that it does on a daily basis. I put here numbers do lie. A couple interesting things. If you look at the town of Blowing Rock, based on this past year's valuations, our property valuations, we're a town of about $1.7 billion in property value. Very little of that is commercial. Most of that's going to be residential. However, if you look at our census data that came out this past year, we've only got 1,376 people, even though we know we have 2,250 houses, and that number's probably 2,300 now since those numbers came out in 2020. So the numbers don't add up when you look at it. A lot of seasonal folks here, a lot of folks that don't claim Blowing Rock as being their permanent residency. How do we know that? Look at the town of Boone. So when you look at population, they're more than 12 times what we are, about 3 times the number of houses that we have here. their property valuation is actually not that much higher than what ours is. So they're about 2.26 billion, where we're at close to 1.7 billion. A lot of high-value properties that allows us to balance our budget in a way that's a little bit different, even with the town next door to us in a lot of ways. And we'll talk about how that looks from a diversity standpoint and how our budget gets balanced. Our tax rate this year in the budget that just started, which was July 1st, is 37 cent. Millage rate, a lot of folks know what that terminology is. That's 37 cent out of $100 worth of value. That's our 22-23. We did have a property reevaluation. The county, Watauga County, and Caldwell did one in 2020, and then 2021 into 2022 was for Watauga. They are the ones that determine the property tax value. So the town of Blowing Rock doesn't determine the value. The counties in North Carolina determine the value. So we simply charge you for the taxes. We don't actually put the values into place. And so everyone received those letters that were here back in the spring, late winter, early spring, about what your property tax value was going to look like. Overall, we looked at about a 35% average for a town. So when we looked at the town of Blowing Rock, we averaged about a 35% increase in overall value. We had a lot of people that went up over 100%. We had some that actually went down, believe it or not. But on average, ours was about 35%. I read an article this morning in the Charlotte Observer where Charlotte's getting ready to go through this, Mecklenburg County. So if you live there, have a second home or a first home there, I think they're projecting about a 50% increase in what I read in the article this morning. So these are common numbers across North Carolina. It was 8 years ago when the last property reevaluation took place. That's why we saw some pretty significant increases. The good news is Watauga County is changing that 8-year cycle to a 5-year cycle. So the next time this will happen is in 2027. So that'll help put a little bit more timing back into looking at some of those property values. And who knows where we'll be then, from an economy standpoint. The Watauga County property tax is 31.8 cent, 32 cent. So when you look at how we compare, so Beech Mountain, which is in Watauga County and Avery, is at 68 cent. Seven Devils is at 47 cent. Again, this is per $100 in value. Banner Elk's at 46. West Jefferson's at 42. Sorry, Blowing Rock's at 37. The red didn't show up as well as I was hoped to. And Boone's at 36. These are our comparison county or comparison municipalities that were within the northwestern kind of area here with Avery and Watauga County and Ashe County. When you look at it, which we all do, if you live in this town or you live within any town, you pay both county taxes and town taxes. It's important when you kind of look at the two together. Beech Mountain is leading the way, depending if you're in Watauga County or Avery County. You're either paying $1 or $1.08. If you kind of go down the list here, Blowing Rock's at 69 cents. So in comparison's sake, between Watauga County at 31.8 and our town is at 37, we'll call it 69 cent total is what you're paying per $100. It was mentioned earlier, I put here the city of Lenoir because Mr. Brown talked about Caldwell County, which is a part of Blowing Rock. Part of the town of Blowing Rock is in Caldwell County. When you talk about what tourism does do for the budget, it does obviously help us tremendously. Caldwell County, lower, much lower in tourism, higher tax rates, 57 cent for the city of Lenoir, 63 cent for Caldwell County, combined $1.20. It's almost double what it would be if you lived in Blowing Rock and Watauga County versus living in Lenoir within that. So pretty significant differences within that. What does that allow us to do? Be extremely diversified. When you look at this pie chart, it doesn't look like this when you go off the mountain. We're able to look at using a lot of different revenue sources here. So I won't expect you to read some of the things at the bottom because it's a little hard to read. The big one, the 46%, is your property taxes. When you're talking the $13 million number of what makes up our budget, 46% of that is property taxes, 20% sales tax, 18% is our TDA, which Mr. Brown just talked about a few minutes ago. We've got our ABC profit, that's a portion of that, and what we call other taxes, utilities, and things of that nature we get through telecoms, through the state. And then sales and services, what we charge for. So we do have certain things within the town that we do charge for, sanitation and some other things like that. So we have some fees that go within that. Again, this pie chart looks much different than if you go 25 minutes down the mountain. You'll see a much heavier emphasis on property taxes because they don't have the sales tax and they don't have the TDA portion to help offset some of that. So again, important for us when we're balancing our budget to make sure that we keep this in mind, that we are very diversified because we are blessed to have the infrastructure that we have here with tourism and sales tax being spent. Couple numbers here from a staffing standpoint. We'll start with kind of what we talked about, those essential services, the protection side of things. This is what you don't think about until you need them, but our Blowing Rock Fire and Rescue and our Blowing Rock Police both are fully staffed, full-time, 24/7. So we've got about 16 individuals at our police department right now, plus dispatch, so about 20 total, and about 14 full-time firefighters/paramedics at Blowing Rock Fire and Rescue. Thing to point out, and I make this point a lot, of our 14 full-time individuals that work at Blowing Rock Fire and Rescue, 11 are paramedics. So you have firefighter/paramedic type level individuals there, which is unheard of, especially for a municipality. You don't get that type of certification. So you've got an 11 out of 14 chance to get a paramedic if you call 911 or if you call for assistance within that. Some of the numbers, our fire and rescue had 945 calls this past year. These are fiscal year numbers. Almost 500 of those were EMS calls. Those are 911 calls. That's a lot for this town. Average for station number 1 response time, 6 minutes and 17 seconds. National average is 9 minutes. That's quick. We'll talk in a minute about some of the initiatives we're trying from a county's perspective and how their numbers are different than that. So keep that 617 in mind. Our Blowing Rock Police Department had 7,500 dispatch calls. A lot of those are traffic calls. A lot of those are on 321. We've got over 12,000 cars a day on average going on 321. So there's a lot of things happening on 321 any given day. 1,471 traffic stops, 60 traffic accidents, 67 arrests, and about 16,323 property checks. Those are second home property checks. We did a lot of jiggling handles, checking doors, that type of thing, especially when folks aren't here in the wintertime. These are big numbers. So when people ask what we do, this is what we're doing. Also, water and sewer. We call it essential. It is. If you were here July 18th, you'll know it's very essential. And we're going to talk a lot about water and sewer in just a few moments. We have over 22 water customers, about 2,000 sewer customers, 22 miles of water line, and they all went empty on the 18th. So we know exactly where they are. 20 miles of sewer, 32 miles of streets. Put snow here. That's a lot of snow when you start pushing, especially big snows that we have up here. We completed over 700 work orders. Those are typical things, cutting bushes, potholes, that type of thing. 22 water and sewer line repairs. A lot of those are on Main Street, and we'll talk about that in a few moments too. And we do pick up residential trash 2 days a week. Republix picks up our recycling. We pick up commercial as well, still including Main Street. Finish out here with the numbers before we kind of get into some of the projects. These are some of our, I call non-essential departments, our planning and zoning, which is really our development, building inspections, things like that. They've seen record year after record year now for a number of years with a number of building permits, number of requests there. We've got several hotels that are either being built right now, they're in the process of being built, or grounds to be broken. Very busy department, has been for a number of years now. Park and Recreation, that's who makes things either happy or they make things beautiful for the most part. So we've got the pool just outside of the pond here. We've got after school and summer camp. They stay full with a waiting list of kids wanting to be in both those programs. And then landscaping, that's probably our number one complaint department of individuals wanting to give us recommendations. Jokingly, obviously, we are well known in the state for our landscape department, award-winning landscape department. The majority of what you see within the town of Blowing Rock either is through them or through discussions with them and some of our local nonprofits that we have here. So tremendous job that they do. And then a lot of folks that never get credit work within Town Hall. So all the things that are getting processed, whether that's the taxes and our clerk or whether that's working through administration and all the different payments and processing that we go within that. So with that, we'll talk about 21-22. So since we met last year, normally I spend a lot of this time kind of giving an update on projects. I've got a few slides here, a couple projects to give you updates on, and a couple things that we call kind of some initiatives that we've been working on. And then we'll really get into kind of the planning phase of what I think is important and what you want to hear about some of the upcoming projects we have. Bass Lake Sidewalk was completed. It took us 7 years to get that project completed. COVID did put it, there we go. COVID did put a little bit of a damper on it, but that wasn't the full reason for the delay. That's about 3,000 linear feet. What a unique project. So I don't know of another project, and no one has ever showed me another project that's linking the town in between, what we're going to have as being the Greenway, which is linking the towns of Blowing Rock and Boone, out to the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Moses Cone Estate. And I put here the Glen Burnie Trail, which is how many towns have a trailhead right in the middle of town. This sidewalk helps link all that together, which was a fantastic project, of which 80% of it was grant funded, which is fantastic. The TDA chipped in a portion, ABC chipped in a portion. So the town really doesn't have a lot of money in this project, but what a fantastic project. Did take us a while to get there, but we are there. And our crosswalks were mentioned earlier. If you've ever been in the town of Blowing Rock on any day of the week that's probably not snowing or sleeting sideways, our pedestrians have always been a little bit interesting in their behavior. So a lot of jaywalking, a lot of things that we are concerned with, that we've put a tremendous amount of effort into with updating our crosswalks. So we now have crosswalks, formalized crosswalks on Main Street and Sunset, which is 2 times 2. So that's something that we didn't have previously. We just had one on the north side. Now we have one on the south side. Flip that, south side, north side. So we have 2 formalized push-button crosswalks, which is the picture you see here, which we're able to bring down our stoplights there and really kind of beautify that area with some of the plantings that you see out here. We also did the same down at 221 and Main Street, Mellow Mushroom Corner is what we call it, and Speckled Trout Corner. So we're able to bring those crosswalks there, again, push-button formalized crosswalks, again, enhancing the pedestrian safety, hopefully also helping with logistics and getting traffic flowing within that versus people just walking, when they thought they should walk. We always joke that everybody would stand up and kind of look, at any given intersection because nobody knew when to walk and not walk. And they always would pick the wrong time to walk, which is when the cars were going, which caused gridlock and craziness. Also added one down at the Brom area out in front of Rumpel. That's not a push-button formalized crosswalk, but it is a crosswalk, which is something we did need there pretty desperately on that end of town from a Main Street standpoint. So this project was completed back in May. Again, I put up here collaboration. This was about a third, and a third. So the town had some money set aside. The TDA chipped in about a third, and our ABC store chipped in a third. I didn't make that note, so I keep bringing up the ABC store. So I hope you don't realize, or I hope you do realize, that the ABC store does a tremendous amount of good within the town. So North Carolina, if you have an ABC store within your town, chances are you get the profits from that store. Our local store here generates over $500,000 or more in profit a year that comes to the town, that we love to use for projects like this. They help pay for half the playground almost. I mean, the TDA paid for the other half. So we joke, but we have, as of this past year, the highest per ticket ABC store in North Carolina. So right next to Boone, which has the second or third lowest one in North Carolina. So we know where premium liquor is being sold, and we take the profits from it within the town, and we keep them here. So you'll hear me say the ABC store, or the ABC profits. That's a good thing. So we don't encourage drinking, but we don't mind it either within the town of Blowing Rock. It does a tremendous amount of good, like with the crosswalks. But yeah, absolutely. Our little ABC store produces about $3 to $4 million a year, give or take, which is about $500,000 in profit. So it's a lot of impact for the town. Not project-wise, but really something that we've put a lot of focus on in the past year with our police department is a couple different initiatives. I put here 24/7 dispatch. Phone number's 295-5210. So if you don't have an emergency, non-emergency, or just a generic question, call that number. Someone's here 24/7. That's not been the case previously, or at least in a number of years. We've brought that back in. Council voted back in the winter to bring that back in-house full-time. We had someone here for the last couple of years, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's now 24/7. We always had officers on the road 24/7. We always have at least a couple of officers on the road. During the day, we may have 3 or 4. We now have individuals sitting over here at our police station dispatching those officers. So whether you've got questions and you can walk in, you've got a complaint and you can walk in, or if our dispatch comes in, it provides an instant voice to those officers that are out running traffic accidents, things like that. So that's something that we did bring back in this year. Council did vote on that, I think back in February, to bring dispatch back in-house 24/7. So someone's always going to be at the police station, always going to be on the road. You're going to have police presence here 24/7. School resource officer, that's not new. That's something that's been in place now for a number of years. But we've got a beautiful elementary school right here in the middle of town, kind of like the Trailhead. How many towns have an elementary school right smack dab in the middle of it? Town council about 4 or 5 years ago, voted to put the funds towards having a full-time school resource officer. Watauga County still doesn't have one at every elementary school. We're the only elementary school in Watauga County that has a full-time school resource officer. If you're out in the county at an elementary school, you're rotating the officer around. So that officer's not there any given day, perhaps. They may have 2 or 3 schools that they visit in a week. And so they all have different schedules. They may break up the day and they're there half a day. They may just do it, one school on Monday, another school on Tuesday. We've got an officer that's here. When the doors are open, we have an officer that's here. And so that's a testament to the town council for putting forth that money every year to make sure that our students right here in the middle of town are protected as well. And so that's the picture up there in the right-hand corner. Lieutenant Bradley Swift is our school resource officer down at the school. But that's a huge asset for us to have here. 2 additional officers. We're in the process of hiring those right now. Council just voted on the budget that just became effective July 1st that has 2 new positions that are going to be primarily focused on traffic and pedestrian safety. A lot on 321, Ransom Street, that type of thing, trying to cut down on some of our speeding issues. We know we have speeding issues. We've put some radar signs up here. We can talk about that. We know we're getting the data in. We also know we have 12,000 cars. There's a lot of volume going through there. And so hopefully in the last few months, you've seen an increased presence on 321, officers out there doing their best and trying to help curb some of that. Letting folks know that are traveling through here that we are taking that very serious. That's why you saw some of those citations being as high as what they are. About 1,600 citations that we wrote this past year. That's more than Watauga County, the town of Boone, and the Highway Patrol wrote together in Watauga County. So we are out there writing citations. Put here traffic signals. We didn't have anything to do with that. That's DOT, but traffic signals are going in down at Green Hill, Rock Road, and 321. That's going to obviously change some of the traffic flow there as well, with regards to some of the speeding and issues that are going in. And we are continuing to add to our fleet of hybrids within our police department. That's something we started about 4 years ago, I guess almost. We got our first hybrid. And so every time we rotate cars through, we're purchasing hybrids, which is obviously helping us save money from a fuel standpoint. EMS, I put here making strides. So just like we talked about the property tax with the county dictating the values, Watauga County also is responsible for providing EMS service. We've got 11 paramedics on staff here with Blowing Rock Fire and Rescue, and they will get to you within 6 minutes and 17 seconds on average if you call 911. And they're going to give you that acute care that you need. We've been asking for about 45 to 50 years. I think 1974 was when the first resolution was put into place of Watauga County. Place an ambulance here 24/7. Place an ambulance here 24/7. We built Station 1, a number of years ago, and we put housing in there for a 24/7 crew. We still don't have a 24/7 crew here, even though we continue to ask for that. That's why you have seen the numbers get beefed up, so to speak, with our paramedics. We're looking to beef those numbers up, looking to keep good certified people here so we can treat individuals before the ambulance does show up. Some of the numbers here, I won't get into the details. This is directly from Watauga Medics, their 2021 annual report. Watauga Medics is the contracted ambulance service within Watauga County. The county doesn't have its own ambulance service. It contracts out with Watauga Medics. You see some numbers here. Blowing Rock, this was, again, last calendar year, 414 EMS calls through Watauga Medics, up from 282 5 years ago. That was a 47% increase. If you look down through that, pretty significant increase compared to some of the others within that area. If you look over here to the right, the town of Boone 5 years ago made up 56% of all calls. That's now 51%. What Mr. Brown talked about earlier, people are moving outside of the town of Boone and buying properties and calling 911 and needing services. Look at Blowing Rock. We went from 12.4% of the total calls in the county to about 15% within that. That's why we keep asking the county for assistance. We keep asking them to bring over an ambulance and have it here 24/7. I put down here Caldwell County. If you saw the press release Mr. Rogers put out on July 1st, we do have a new partnership with Caldwell County. So if you're one of our couple hundred residents that live in Caldwell County, within the town of Blowing Rock, within Caldwell County, and you dial 911, you will get a Caldwell County ambulance that will show up, along with our folks as well. That ambulance is sitting at our station 24/7. If you're on the Watauga County side of Blowing Rock and you call 911, that ambulance will not be allowed to come and assist you. They're not allowed to cross over in county lines, so that's something to keep a note of as we continue to ask Watauga County for this. So again, if you're in Caldwell County and you dial 911, that ambulance will come to you and take you to Watauga Medical Center, Caldwell if you choose to do so. If you're in Watauga County, more than likely, unless it's one of the few hours that the ambulance is here, we do have a rotating ambulance, about 6 hours or so a day. If it's outside of that 6 hours, the ambulance is coming from Boone. And that's why you saw some of the times, or you see some of the times that you have down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So based on Watauga Medics' numbers, Blowing Rock is 11 minutes and 27 seconds. I said a few minutes ago, 6 minutes and 17 seconds. Pretty significant difference between us getting to you versus the ambulance getting to you. So I won't beat the dead horse anymore, but EMS continues to be something that we hope to make strides within the county. I'm sorry, I'm going over, Charles. What's on deck? So 2023, so exciting things, mostly with water and sewer. So again, we'll go back to July the 18th and talk about some of the things that took place there. We do have an exciting project, our Park and Recreation Trust Fund grant. We'll talk about that. I called them here the Big Three. That's our Memorial Park transformation. We do have a ton of water and sewer projects that are coming up, and we are working on parking. So our Park and Recreation Trust Fund grant, we are getting ready, and you'll see the timeline down here in the bottom, to submit all of our plans for permitting and go for bid this winter and break ground on a revamp of Memorial Park. And I've got a slide here in a minute to show you some of the things that are coming up within that. That's about a $1.3 million project. $500,000 came from a part of grant that we just got awarded thanks to Mr. David Harwood putting together the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee that applied for that. There were about 60-ish applications. We were the #1 scoring application in all the state, which is why we got the $500,000 grant to help pay for some of the renovations that are going on. So a tremendous job there. $450,000 is coming from bond money that the council put together or put forth in 2014 for some of these exact things that we're going to talk about in just a few moments. Some of these exact needs that are out there, council put forth that money a long time ago. A lot of foresight with council during that 2014 bond issuance to get to where we are. And then again, here we are with the TDA and ABC money helping kind of bring up the rear about $350,000 from those two entities to help pay for this project. So what you don't see here is you're not seeing increases of taxes and things like that helping pay for these within that. It's going to be hard to see here. Let me just tell you, because I tried to get this in color. I didn't get it, so I apologize for that. So here's some of the highlights. New bathroom facilities. So I talked a few moments ago about bathrooms. We did a little test, not a technical test, a little clicker on the door in the bathrooms in October of 2021. 34,000 people used the Memorial Park bathrooms in October 2021. So we know we need more bathrooms. So we're more than doubling the size of the bathrooms. Where the bathrooms are currently, we're going to simply use kind of the breezeway approach, add another set right beside of it, breezeway in between, renovate the old once we get the new open, and we'll have the options of being able to open and close as we clean and that type of thing. More than doubling the size of the bathrooms. Something that we've not had from Wallingford, right here where we are, ADA accessibility, putting a ramp in the back side of the park here, helping ADA accessibility getting up into the park, especially from down here, the parking deck. That's a huge component of this. Also adding some things, additional picnic tables, some additional bench seating, different places for people to sit. Folks love to come and sit within our park, watch their children play, that type of thing. We're adding permanent pickleball courts. So we don't have permanent pickleball courts right now. We are keeping the hybrid courts, but we're adding additional permanent courts right next door to it. So we'll have 2 additional pickleball courts. Revamping the tennis courts. And so the tennis courts are going to be torn out, new surface is going to be put down. Same location, tad bit smaller, but still to regulation. And that will allow us to expand some of the picnic areas and stuff around there as well. A new hut for things to be, sport equipment, things like that to be given out. Some cornhole boards and things like that to help add to some of the requests that we've had within this. Sidewalks being widened, additional sidewalks being put in down on the south end of the park. So Tremendous project here. Again, grant funded, bond funded, TDA funded, ABC funded, is going to make a huge difference. Our timeline I put down here at the bottom, we're hoping to break ground just as soon as the weather lets us in the spring of this year. I put here May of 2024. We hope it's sooner than that. So we're looking to have construction really 2023. Again, talking about 2023. A lot of stuff's going to be happening in 2023. Water and sewer. So for 2 years now, we have been talking at every retreat and every meeting just about that we can possibly have of taking care of our infrastructure, looking at what our water and sewer needs are. A lot was done in 2014 with the bond issuance. So a lot of things have already been taken care of. If you remember the Sunset Project, brand new water lines, sewer lines, stormwater, things like that put in. If you remember, if you live over on Sourwood and go forth in some of those areas, there's been a lot of updates to the water and sewer systems in this town. We've got some big ones that we've been putting off that are coming up in 2022 and 2023 into 2024, and we'll talk about those. This is just a listing of things. Over $10 million in water and sewer projects will break ground this spring, so a lot of stuff going on with water and sewer. It's needed. Nothing's more needed than Main Street. Our Main Street water line goes back, we put here 1910. We don't know actually how old some of these lines are. We'll say 1910. They're old. We know they're old. We've had over 28 water line or sewer breaks in the last 10 years. So I put up there earlier, we had 22 breaks this year. Chances are, a good majority of them are probably on Main Street, including the one on the 18th of July was technically this line. This is going to be almost 2 miles of water line, so essentially end to end on Main Street from 321 to 321. Brand new water line going in, sewer line going in. This is a $4.8 million project, 100% state paid for. I put here, thank you to Ray Pickett and Deanna Ballard. They were able to include in their budget this past year the $4.8 million. This is paid for, so we don't have to pay for this. This is something that was a tremendous gift from the state to the town for us. It's not every day a town of this size gets $5 million. We've got it. It's sitting there waiting on us to do this project. Huge project with us. We are going to make sure that we do this very systematically. We aren't going to be closing down Main Street. There will be times at the end that we may have to close it down for periods of time to do connections, but we're going to keep one lane open at all times. We're only going to go a certain amount of feet each day and put binders back. So we're never going to have gravel roads and things like that on Main Street. So we've got things to work through logistically, and we're going to communicate and make sure we're on top of the communication, but we're not closing Main Street down to do this project. So if you can imagine Main Street and the yellow line that runs down the middle, the water line's going on one side and the sewer's going on the other. So we'll start on one end and go down, and we'll turn around and come back for the most part. Never closing down both sides, other than maybe just a periodic time from here to here. So we'll keep one lane open. And again, we may only work at 100 feet at a time, do that section, put a binder back, asphalt binder back, move on, do the next section type of thing. So we'll make sure that we keep this open. We know how busy we are, so we are well aware of it. 2 pictures up here. Picture on your left, that's the sewer line. That wasn't broken. We were there because the water line broke. One of our guys fell through the sewer line. He stepped on it accidentally. So that tells you the age of the sewer line. It crumbled. That's what happened there. On the right, and it's hard to see, it looks like a fountain. It's not this fountain. It's not John Aldridge's fountain that's out here. This is the fountain that was created with the water line break on July 18th. So when we lost water, that's where it was. If you're going down Main Street, right before you get to Chatola on the left, right past Chatola's entrance on the left, the creek runs under the road. That's where that was. That's about a 4-foot deep crater and about a 10-foot wide crater with a nice fountain of about 3 million gallons of water that just bubbled up within that. The best part was a lot of us didn't know that line was there. That's Main Street. That's dating back older than any of us. So a lot of us didn't know necessarily where that line was. That line was 4 feet below the creek bed. So when it gave way at whatever time it was on Sunday, the day before we found out, that's why we didn't know about it. That's why we didn't, because we fully expected on the 18th, we would come in once we realized the water system had essentially been drained. We fully expected catastrophic failure somewhere. Road failure, sinkholes, a mountain collapse. It was right here in this creek that then goes into the Coffer Dam at Chatola, that then goes into a 6 or 7 million gallon lake that then goes over the dam into a river. This is why we couldn't find it for a number of hours. It was found here because someone at Chatola's guardhouse smelled chlorine flowing into it. That's where it was. So that's the line that we need to replace. That's a big one within that. Quick outline here. We're going to start everything this winter. Bids are going to go out. Ground's going to be broken this spring. It's going to take us a while. We put here completion November of 2024. It's going to take us probably 12 to 18 months to do this project. It's a big one, like I said. We've got to make sure we take our time and do it right and don't disturb commerce too much. Big project coming up. Next big thing, upgrading our water plants and our wastewater plants. The picture on the left is an actual picture from our water plant right now. That's our control systems. On the right is what new control systems look like. We're putting a ton of emphasis on updating our water plants and our wastewater plants, putting in alarm systems, putting in leveler enhancers, putting things in that's going to allow us to have real second data no matter where we are and what we're doing with what's going on with our water system and our wastewater plant, something we've not had. The water plant was built in 1978. Most of the things in there are original. Pictures here from the basement of the water plant. Again, this is all going to be replaced with this project that's starting this winter. New piping, new fittings, new high-efficiency pumps that are going in. Again, tremendous amount of money and effort being put towards the water plant and the wastewater plant. Here's something that's already been done. Council approved about 1.5 years ago. On the left is our old chemical tanks, bulk tanks. On the right's the new. Obviously, you can see which one looks better. When it's all said and done, the basement of the water plant is going to look like the right versus the left. These pictures are going to turn into new pictures with new piping, new pumps, things of that nature. Again, all starting this winter, hoping to be completed in about 1.5 years from now. Pictures from the wastewater plant, won't go into a lot of details, they're stinky. But our wastewater plant, again, just like our water plant, serves 2,000 customers. A lot of waste goes through there. Built in '85, so about 7 years younger than our water plant, but original, a lot of original within the control systems. So again, putting in new control systems to allow for when we have those flow events, heavy rains of that nature, it allows us to have more real-time data to stay on top of that. Mayview Lift Station. If you live in the Mayview area, raise your hand. So all of your waste goes through this building. I don't know if you know that or not, but this is the Mayview Lift Station. We put here 75 years old. Like a lot of things, and maybe Doug or Charlie can tell us, we don't know how old this old is. It was before their time, right? So this lift station has been there for a number of years. Every time a toilet flushes, shower gets used in Mayview, it goes through this building at the head of the Glen Burnie, right beside the creek. Not a great location for it. So it has had subject to fail over the years. So we've had some issues there. Again, this big project we're talking about, the Main Street project, separate, paid for. We're talking about water plants, sewer plants, lift stations. These are things that are getting ready to kick off, be bid, and start work. This one's a huge one. This will allow a lot of things. One, getting us up to compliance with some of the issues we have that we have given the location of it. We're going to move it slightly away from the creek, not greatly, updating the line as well. It's also going to allow us for expansion opportunities within Mayview, additional sewer lines that can be put in. We're afraid to put another toilet on this thing at this point, looking the way that it does. But again, this is about $1 million building. I know that sounds crazy. It's $1 million to replace this building and the line that goes into it. Again, huge project for us to take on. And kind of lastly of this big project that we're looking at, our PRVs. Again, learned a lot. If you didn't, there was a lot of information that was shared on the 18th. We've got a gravity-fed system. Our water goes up to Green Hill, big tank up there, 3 million gallons that did empty. From there, it travels down, no pumps. It's all gravity-fed. We've got 24 pressure-reducing valves throughout our town that help slow that water down because it is going from the top down to the bottom. So the lower you are, the more pressure you would have, too much pressure, without these pressure-reducing valves. We've already placed 2 of them. Out of the 24, we did put together a prioritization list. The other 22, if we need to, we're not quite sure we need to replace all of them, will be a part of this project as well. Top picture is an old pressure-reducing valve from the 1960s and 70s. The bottom one here is actually on Green Street. So when the work was done for Bass Lake Sidewalk, we were able to relocate that pressure-reducing valve over to the side. That's actually a picture from above down into the manhole. That's a big vault. You can get down in and work on it, check pressures, put that SCADA control system there so we can make sure we know what pressures are reading within that. We've done 2 of these so far. This project's going to help pay for the others within that. So in total, all the things I just mentioned, Main Street aside, paid for, this is about $4 million worth of water and sewer projects, water plant, sewer plant, lift station, PRVs. We're in the process right now. We've completed our engineering report, working with the Mayview lift station. Again, we put here environmentals. It's beside of a creek, not the ideal location for a sewer pump station, but we're working with the state on that. We are getting ready to issue what we call a USDA application, very low interest, talking 1%, 1.2% type loan to be able to do this. Good news is we've been able to already put together our water and sewer rates over the last couple of years to help pay for this. So this has already been accounted for. You're not going to see significant increases in your water and sewer rates. You're going to see just our consistent 2%, 3%, that type of thing moving forward. Our big increase we did a couple years ago is help setting the stage for this debt service that's out there. Again, we're looking to have bids out this winter and spring 2023. A lot of stuff's going to break grounds in spring of 2023. Last thing we'll talk about here with the water and sewer is water meters. Everybody's got a water meter. If you're a water customer, and we've got about 2,300 of you within the town, we're going to AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure. You'll get a new water meter, and you will also have the ability to go in from a smartphone, computer, and have real-time data of what your water usage is. Right now, you know that every 2 months when you get your bill. We know it a lot of times every 2 months when we go read your meter that there's a problem there, especially if you aren't here. You may not know it until truly you get your bill within, with 2 months, 2 months pass in between the two. This gives real-time data. It's every 6 minutes, so it's pretty close. Every 6 minutes, these meters will read up to the cloud and be able to transmit the water usage to anywhere in the world. We'll give everybody accounts. Everybody's going to have access to that. If you want it, if you don't, that's fine. Also allows us to put alarms on there, so when we know we've got problems at your house or a multiple of houses, we may have pressure fluctuations. We'll know that. This is going to have that technology within that. Again, we're going through the process right now of looking at vendors. Again, we're going to bid this late 2022 with hopefully starting this replacement. It's going to take a while. There's 2,300 meters in this town, so that's going to take probably 1 to 2 years to replace those meters. Again, a lot of water, a lot of sewer stuff going on. It's needed. Again, I don't think I have to tell you if you're here on the 18th. It's essential for us to have these things put into place. My last couple slides here, and I'm sure that I went over, and I apologize, is parking. So parking is something that we've all realized for a number of years as being an issue here in the town. Based on the Roger Brooks recommendation, town council retreats and discussions that we've been having now for a couple years, we put together a parking committee. There's a lot of people on here. I won't read everybody. We tried our best to get a representation from homeowners to business owners, private lots, et cetera. This group's been meeting now for the last number of months. Some of the things that they were asked to look into is whether or not we should do pay to park. The majority of that group said yes as we had these meetings and discussed. So yes, not everybody said it, but the majority said it. Goals. Some of the goals are to provide funds for additional parking facilities. Some of the goals are to provide funds to help the fund be self-sustaining, pay for parking fines, pay for parking metering, that type of thing. When I say paid parking, one thing that was discussed, not a metering system. So when you go to Boone, every parking space has a meter. We aren't talking those. We're not talking meters. No meters is what this group decided. We're talking a few kiosks, or more than likely your smartphone, using an app, scanning something. We're also going to have an individual, more than likely, sitting over at the police station that you can walk up to, that type of thing. But we're not looking to have meters within each parking space there. So we're not looking to change the beautification of downtown and what it's going to look like. We talked about dates and times, and again, I want to emphasize, this has not been approved by town council. This group has just been put together to help brainstorm some of the things that we were hoping and some of the things we didn't know, some of the things that we've been able to bring to light, again, from a wide array of individuals that make up a lot of different organizations here, business owners, that type of thing. So we were able to go through, and again, nothing's been set in stone here. We're looking to bring something to council this fall, early winter, with some of these recommendations. Like with some of the other things, we are talking to vendors and looking at gathering data right now, turnover of parking spaces, that type of thing. Also, still got some things to figure out, residential parking, employee parking. We know we have a lot of people on Main Street at any given time that are employees. I mean, we know we have a parking shortage as well, additional parking facility potentially, and what that's going to look like. Over here on the right is just a sketch drawing of what a parking facility or parking lot may look like. in a piece of property that the council bought out beside of the fire station. It used to be Barry Buxton's property, right beside of the fire station. It's been mowed recently. If you've been by there, the town owns that. And so we're looking constantly of what we can do as we get, kind of amped up into what paid parking may look like. So we have some recommendations for town council and things for them to consider. So again, nothing here has been approved, nothing's been set in stone. This group's been working the last number of months tirelessly, putting together some of these answers to some of these questions here and what that's going to look like. So that's a lot of information. I didn't go into a lot of other things. I could definitely speak for a couple hours. I don't know if it's question time now. If I open that up, is that fine? So, all right, open to questions. You want me to take it? Yeah. Yes, Gene.
Shane, I noticed you said, and great job, I mean, a lot of work, and really do appreciate this. Most of what you said is gonna not really start until spring because of, as Charlie Mays said, things are slow in the public sector. If something like what happened in July happened tomorrow, are there any temporary alarms or alert systems that could be put in such that we wouldn't get to the extent of losing all the water in the tower before we know about it?
Absolutely. So we made the decision not too long after the 18th to go ahead and get a temporary system put into place. So we have a very basic system that's in place that gives us just kind of the bare bones readings of what's out there as we're waiting on this full-fledged system to be in place. So as of right now, that system's being installed. And again, it's a very basic system, but it does allow us to have more knowledge than we did have prior to the 18th. Prior to the 18th, we'd never had what had happened in this town happen, where we lost the full water system. It takes really the timing of it. We don't necessarily have someone there on Sunday evenings. It takes it being in a creek. It takes a lot of things. Normally what happens in this town, we've got a lot of really great citizens, tourists. As soon as they see a water leak, they call the mayor, they call myself, they call Mr. Matheson, they call Mr. Harwood, they call someone. And so our water leaks are usually identified minutes after they happen because there's water bubbling up out of the road and someone sees it. This one probably started happening on Sunday, and we didn't realize it until Monday morning. And we wouldn't have realized it just given the fact of where it was within that. But yes, a temporary system has been put into place until the full-fledged system gets put in.
One other question. Somebody else said? Okay, our house burned to the ground, not here, but in Rocky Mountain. So we have, very sensitive about, in the middle of the night, about fires. I did send an email and Doug Matheson said that there are lots of water point shuttle system, mutual aid and whatnot if there are fires. Can you kind of explain to us if somebody's house catches on fire and there is a water problem, like what happened in July, how can we be sure as homeowners that
Sure.
some water will
Sure.
get in the house?
Yeah, so in North Carolina, in order to be a fire department, you've got to have fire suppression options. And so it's not just option one. I mean, option one is that you've got a hydrant right beside of where you need to go. And the former fire chief in the back may answer this better than I, but we obviously have multiple options after that. So if that hydrant doesn't work, then obviously do we have another hydrant within a proximity of that? We obviously have tankers, so we're bringing water to the fire. We have point distributions throughout the town and outside of the town, whether that's the lake, so that's like Broyhill Lake, that's the pool if need be. If you're out in the county, you've got a lot of ponds and things like that. If you ever see standpipes, and you may see even a sign that says Blowing Rock Fire and Rescue Point Distribution, that standpipe is there, so if we need to go grab water quickly for the tanker, we can go grab water quickly. Outside of that, there's a wide array of other options that we can get to. So I can't give you the number of options to say that what we have, there's many. So there's many water source options that we have at our disposal at all times within that. So just because that hydrant may not work, or you may not have a hydrant, depending on where you live. If you're out in the country, you may not have a water hydrant or fire hydrant there. We're either bringing water to that, or we have water that's close enough by that we can get to it to bring it in. So we're hauling in at that point. So yeah, that's not an issue by any means. We've got plenty of plans and plans on top of plans. So.
Shane, if you would mention also that some of the fire hydrants by the fire station were operational.
Yes.
Even with the total loss of
Yeah, so we never lost, certain sections of town, 321, some other areas of town never lost water that day, the fire station, some other things. So we have some things in place there as well, that we can even get water from certain hydrants that we know that were active and staying active during that time. And so just because we lost the system, so to speak, didn't mean we didn't lose everything, and we knew that. We made that assessment by about 4 o'clock that morning. We knew where we had water and where we didn't have water, and then we made a plan from that. And that was something, again, second to none staff here, by 5 a.m., where most of us are asleep, we've got council members out looking for this leak. We've got staff that are making plans, not only water plans, but fire suppression plans, police, that type of thing. So that's absolutely something that we stay on top of, so, certainly. Yes, sir.
You indicated that the Main Street Water and Sewer project was completely paid for.
Yes, sir.
Have you received any bids for it yet?
We have not. So we have found here in the mountains, we get much better bids, more advantageous for us to bid most things in the wintertime when work's a little bit slower, for them to get on and get ready as soon as the ground breaks, as soon as the ground thaws. And so we'll bid every one of these projects, including the park project, around the October, November, December timeframe with an expectation of breaking ground as soon as it thaws, which is usually around March or April here. So we haven't received any bids at this point.
So you don't know whether it's really fully paid for?
We don't. We're optimistic within that. If not, we have options that, number one, is we're going to go back to the state and ask for additional funding. The state has been great working with us, and they've put a lot of emphasis statewide in water and sewer projects. So that would be step number one if we were to go over on that bid, is going back to the state and asking for that additional funding. Fingers crossed, though. So. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Shane, and thank all of you for coming out tonight. Our civic engagement is very important. It's good to see this number of folks here tonight, and we appreciate you being here, and we will see you next year.